So I'm going to quickly talk about this challenge as an example because it's brought up a lot. And so here it's only about an hour and a half from my house. So I've been there, these places, quite a few times. But here's some vertical trees. You see at the top of what's called Specimen Ridge. Notice the material that it's in. It's in breccia, volcanic breccia, very angular, as I'll show you more pictures. They're petrified. When we were up there one time, it looked like some of the wood in these things was not petrified, or at least it was not permineralized a lot, or it was not at all or lightly. It's hard to tell without an analysis. So anyway, here's kind of a cutout that many people see. They believe it's a series of forests grew for 500 years, overwhelmed by a volcanic debris flow, and then had to wait for another 500 years, grew again. And so every one of these layers you see here of fossil trees, mostly vertical, a lot of them horizontal, represents about 1,000 years. And so on Specimen Ridge, I think there's about approximately 25 levels. And there's another location called Specimen Creek, which has nothing to do with Specimen Ridge. And it has 65 levels. So that'd be 65,000 years, supposedly all that was formed. But when you look closer, you find lots of problems. Here's a picture of Specimen Creek. And you can see some of the fossil trees. Some are at an angle. So this is one location. It's quite dangerous. I used to guide people up there, but then when I realized how dangerous it was, I'm not doing that again. Anyway, this is the material that it's formed in. It's in what's called the Absaroka volcanics, which are layer after layer of volcanic debris flows, a lahar or breccia. Sometimes there are actually flows of basalt, and sometimes there's ash layers. And it's been greatly eroded after it was formed. It was deposited over an area of 9,000 square kilometers, and it was about 2,000 meters deep, layer after layer formed over that huge area. And that's where the vertical trees are in a number of places. You can see isolated trees too in this. And what it looks like on the ground is that. It's difficult to imagine a forest growing in that stuff. Volcanic breccia. And here's some challenging observations for the Uniformitarians, the skeptics that are listening to this or going to view it later. First of all, you don't have any soils. Trees need soils. You have organic layers. And in the organic layers, you find fossil leaves and needles, but they're not decayed. So it's just a leaf litter that's been quickly buried. No soils. Big problem. And when you look at the types of tree from the pollen and analysis of the trees, there's 200 species of trees from the tropics to the cool temperate, all in one area, which makes no sense, even though I know that skeptics have suggested ways to avoid that. And a man from Loma Linda University did a master's and a PhD matching the rings from 3 levels, indicating that there weren't separate forests over 1,000 years, but they were the same forest deposited in 3 different layers. Also, there's no animal fossils, which is another strange feature. Anyway, that's challenging. And then when Mount St. Helens went off in 1980 and Spirit Lake collected hundreds of thousands of logs, we have an analog for explaining the Yellowstone fossil forest. A lot of these trees were vertical, were floating vertical, and they sank vertically as the bottom was forming sediment, kind of like this right here. And this brings up another issue with, there's a lot of vertical trees around the earth. I've seen probably a dozen locations. Here's one in Tennessee. Notice no roots or soil, which would indicate the log mat model dropping trees vertically as sediments forming. Here is Fluorescent National Monument in Colorado. These are redwood trees up to 4 meters in diameter. They're up to about 700 years old based on let's see, the rings. Or anyway, it has no soil or roots. Anyway, this is typical of areas with that are paleoflora sites. Also, Harold Coffin noticed one polystrate tree upside down, indicating again that we can account for not only the Yellowstone fossil forests, but vertical trees by the log mat model. And here's a brief kind of a schematic of this. Here's the log mat floating in what is now the Yellowstone Park area. And the bottom is being deposited with volcanic debris, and logs are sinking vertically. And as in the debris flows one after another, like that. So I think that's a good model. And I can thank the late Dr. Harold Coffin for this information. A good friend of mine, by the way.